What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel where we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories from Marvel, from DC, IDW, so on and so on. Now, guys, today we are going to jump back over to DC Comics. And the reason why is because we have to finish a storyline we started last week, which was Superman, Lois, and Clark. And so guys, in today's video, we are going to cover the second half of this storyline and wrap everything up. So guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories in the near future. But guys, let's dive into the second half of Superman, Lois, and Clark. I hope you enjoy. So to begin today's video, we don't pick up where our last video left off at. Instead, we jump back in time where our pre-New 52 Superman was watching over the New 52 Batman. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because when it comes to these two characters in the pre-New 52 world, these two were close friends. But since this is the New 52 world, these guys never met because this new world had its own Superman and he is Batman's close friend and not the pre-New 52 Superman. And so for our pre-New 52 Superman, he kind of feels lonely in this world because he doesn't have a friend to talk to at all. Now we do jump back to the present day where our last video left off at, which if you guys remember that our last video left off with Superman getting his butt kicked by his new villain that was made for this storyline, Blank. Now something else for you guys to remember, Blank is mind controlling Hank Henshaw, but also he is planning to go after Lois Lane and Jonathan Kent because he knows Superman loves them. Now you do have Lois Lane call the fortress to talk to Superman, but Blank answers the call and he tells her that he is going to come after her to kill her off. But as soon as he says that, you have Superman bounce back from being knocked out because Blank crossed the line about talking about going after Lois Lane and Jonathan Kent. Now you have Dan Jurgens make this fight something worth to read. And what I mean is that you would think that Superman would just wrap this battle up quickly. But Blank actually gives Superman a challenge. Because we come to find out Blank used his telekinesis powers as a shield. Superman should be able to punch him once and knock out Blank. But because Blank is using his powers as a shield, most punches that Superman throws does not really hurt Blank at all. Something else to point out is how smart Blank is, because he does use his powers not just to control humans, he does use his powers to control robots that are in the fortress, which you do see Superman struggle with all of these things. But then we see Hank Henshaw break the control of Blank and was able to use a weapon that was in the fortress to help Superman fight against Blank and actually defeat Blank and let Superman throw him back in his prison cell. Now we do jump over to a quick one-page setting where we pick up with another character being introduced to us for the first time. This character name is Bradley Glenn, and he is this guy who is right now getting out of jail, but while leaving the prison, he has this random group of people offering him a job to do a TV show as a supervillain in a power armor that will actually cause damage to Metropolis, but innocent people should not get hurt because their goal is to show how powerful villains can be and how they can cause harm to Metropolis. Now we do jump back over to Superman and we see him do two things here. The first thing we see him do is that he takes Hank Henshaw back to the crash site of the Excalibur spaceship. Now the reason why he kind of kidnapped Hank Henshaw in the first place is because he was scared of the fact that this man would become Cyborg Superman. like he did in the pre-New 52 world. But finding out that this Hank Henshaw might not become Cyborg Superman, he takes him back to the crashed ship site. Now, we also see him go back home to Lois Lane, and that is when he tells her some information on what happened earlier in the fortress. But then you have Lois tell Superman that what happened to her in our last video, where Energang kidnapped her publisher, Cora. Because remember, Lois Lane had been writing books and getting them published under a fake name to bring down Energang. But Energang was able to figure out who was Arthur X, and they are now starting to come after Lois Lane. But that is when you have Lois Lane afraid that their world is falling apart, and she's afraid that Jonathan might find out soon that his father is Superman. But right when she says that, the next room over, Jonathan finds his father's Superman outfit. Now we do jump forward a couple hours after Lois Lane told Superman about the fact Energang is starting to come after her. And so with that, you have Superman using his super hearing powers to see if he is able to find Cora. The plan for him to find her is that Lois Lane is going to call her phone, because Cora has a ringtone that only plays when Lois is calling Cora. And so with that, of course, you have Superman using his hearing powers, hoping that the kidnappers have the phone on them still, which of course they still do. Which honestly, I kind of find it funny, because why keep the phone around if you're not going to deactivate the phone? You make it easier for people to find you, because as soon as Lois Lane calls the phone, Superman goes to find Cora, and he basically defeats the thugs in a matter of seconds, which he breaks her binds and tells her to take the kidnappers' cars and go find a police station to warn them. Like the kidnapper plans fell apart because they did not deactivate the cell phone. Now we do jump back over to Bradley Glenn, who again was this character that was hired by a TV show to basically be a fake super villain. And what I mean is that they hired him to just wreak havoc on Metropolis, just to show how supervillains are bad for the city. Their plan is to destroy a bridge that was supposed to be empty, and so that no one will get hurt. The problem is though, the bridge is full of people, and so when this guy who was only supposed to act as a supervillain destroys this bridge, people's lives are now in danger. And so with that, while Superman was traveling back from saving Cora from Energang, he sees what is going on with the bridge and people are getting hurt. And so he has to stop this man, at the same time save people's lives. But while this is going on with Superman, we jump over to Lois Lane picking up Jonathan Kent from school, which when she gets there, she finds her son in the library working on some kind of research. And when she sees what he has been looking up, she finds out that he has been looking at articles about his father being Superman. And so she now knows maybe it's time for them to have the talk. And so when they are leaving the school to go back home, that is when you have Energang come from behind and basically grab them to, of course, kill her off. And since Jonathan was there, they are planning to kill him as well. That is when you have the story do this thing where it jumps back and forth between Superman and Lois Lane. The reason why is because while Energang had locked up Lois Lane and Jonathan in this shed, which they didn't light the building on fire, hoping to kill Lois and Jonathan, Superman is still dealing with the bridge problem that was made by Bradley Glenn, because you have Lois trying to call out to her husband, hoping Superman super hearing would tell him that she is in danger, but he is too busy trying to save lives and stop Bradley Glenn. And so it does seem like this could be the end for Lois and Jonathan. But then you have Jonathan bring up the fact that he knows that his parents has been lying to him, that he knows that Superman is his father. Why does this world have two Superman and also two Lois Lanes? But while yelling and being mad at his mother, his powers finally manifest, where he was able to break out of his binds and then free his mother as well. He goes to grab the door handle, which should have burned him, but it doesn't, because his powers are starting to manifest for the first time ever. Then we jump back over to Hank Henshaw, who is right now being interrogated by this detective, which again, his name is Detective Chambers. But Chambers does not believe that Hank Henshaw has no idea of what happened in space, or where was he when the army arrived to the crash site. But Hank Henshaw keeps playing the game where he tells Chambers that he does not remember what happened in space, or where was he when the army arrived to the crash site. Now we know that something happened in space, that basically he left his team behind, but also when he crash landed back on Earth, Clark Kent, aka Superman, kidnapped him. But while he's talking to Chambers, that is when the wall does get blasted open. And that is when we have a young lady walk in, and she tells us in the characters that her name is Hiatus. And I really hope I pronounced her name correctly. Now, Hiatus is an old character since the 1960s. But ever since the New 52 was made, there's not much about her in this new world because she only appeared in one other story. Now, also guys, she is a queen of a world called Allstar, and I hope I pronounced that correctly as well. But right now, she is here looking for the Oblivion Stone. And so of course, you have the story shift back over to Lois Lane and Jonathan right now walking out of the shed that was on fire. And so you have Lois realizing after being saved by her son that he's going to have some questions, because he just used his newfound powers to basically save their lives. Now, of course, Intergang was watching the building to make sure that Lois and Jonathan did die. And when they see that Lois and Jonathan escaped the building, they try to go after her again to make sure she dies this time. Which this time, Superman does appear to save his family, which it shows that Superman took care of the bridge problem from earlier and was able to save his family. Now, the story brings us what to me is the best moment of the whole story, because after Superman saved Lois and Jonathan, Lois informs Superman that their son knows everything and the fact that Jonathan Powers has manifest. And so you have Clark Kent realize that it is time for the talk, which at first you have Jonathan freaking out because his theories about his father being Superman was right, but also the fact that he has powers as well now too. So the big question is, where do we go from here? But you have Superman explain everything that he can to a young boy who is confused. But of course, it does work, and Jonathan is happy that his family finally told him everything. But while this family moment is going on, you have Superman start to have these visions of some random event. And so with that happening, Superman knows he has to leave his family to figure out what they mean. And so then you have the story shift back over to Hank Henshaw, who is right now being tortured by this Hiatus character. But right now you have her looking through the pockets of Henshaw trying to find the Oblivion Stone, which of course she does find the Oblivion Stone. But thing is though guys, she only finds one half of the stone. And so the question is now, where is the other half of the Oblivion Stone? And that is when you have the book show us a picture that the other half of the stone is being kept right now in Superman's Himalaya's Fortress of Solitude. Now, the final chapter of this story, you had the story shift over to Jonathan and Lois. And to me, this is Jonathan learning something else that is important for him right now. And what I mean is that you have Jonathan and Lois looking at different articles about Superman. Jonathan still can't believe that his father is Superman. And so, with him learning that, and also the fact that he might have powers as well, you have Jonathan try to fly by jumping off the porch of his house, which of course he doesn't. But you have Lois explain to her son that his powers are still manifesting. And so that moment from earlier was just him getting some of his powers for just a few seconds. Now we reached a point where the story starts to wrap everything up, because you have Superman fly over to the same island Hank Henshaw is being tortured on by Hiatus. And so when he arrives there, he realized that this woman is the same one he saw in those visions. And so you have Superman fight against her because he knows that she is an enemy, that most likely she is going to kill off Hank Henshaw, and she is looking for the Oblivion Stone. Now at first, Superman has no idea what the stone is that she is talking about, but after a few pages of him fighting against her, he comes to find out more information about the Oblivion Stone, which then he realized that she only has half of the stone, and the other half is in his own Fortress of Solitude. But again, after a few pages of them fighting against each other, you have the fight kind of wrap up with Hiatus just leaving Earth, realizing that she needs to come back with the plan because of Superman. Then it moves on with Superman just flying away and going home, but him forgetting about the first half of the Oblivion Stone that Hank Henshaw has. Now the story does jump over to Superman arriving back home to Lois Lane and Jonathan Kent. Now this is Superman continuing the idea of teaching the origin of Superman, but also the fact how they are from a different world. But the biggest part of this moment is when he pulls out his classic Superman outfit, where he tells Jonathan that what the symbol of Superman stands for, with the fact it stands for hope, and how even in the darkest hour, people have someone or something to look up to and keep pushing. And then goes on to explain that when he was Jonathan's age, he was lost as well. But he explained that it will take time to understand everything, that if he ever needs hope, look at this emblem. If he ever needs someone to talk to, he can come to his parents. Go to his parents. And guys, this is the end of Superman, Lois, and Clark. Now guys, this is part of the video where I basically sit down and give my thoughts on about this book. Now, last week we did not do that because, hey, we only covered the first half of this storyline. But since we're now done with the whole thing, I can kind of sit down and give my thoughts on about this storyline. Now, when it comes to Superman, Lois, and Clark, honestly, I love this run. I love this storyline. And the reason why is because, well, there's a long list. But first thing first, real quick side note. I want to thank the person out there who recommended this storyline for me. Because honestly, this was amazing to read. Because I skipped this storyline. I literally jumped right into DC Rebirth. And that point right there, Jonathan Kent is basically Superboy. Like, his powers have manifest all the way. Well, not all the way, but more than it was in this storyline right here. And by that point, Clark and Lois, they had an idea on how to raise their son with his powers. But with this storyline right here, Jonathan is just a normal human being at first. And they're kind of like, yeah, he has no powers. We're good. But then by the end of the storyline, they realize, oh crap, our son has powers. And to me, it's kind of cool to watch him kind of grow into his powers finally coming out, finally manifesting. but also watching Clark and Lois realize that they're going to have to change their games. It's me seeing the early stages of them being parents to their son. And it's kind of cool to see that, because with DC Rebirth, you pick up and they're already like 5-6 years in of being parents. But this book right here, you get to watch I can't talk, sorry guys. You watch them be parents from the beginning all the way to this point right here when he is 5 years old and his powers manifest. Now, something else I want to point out is that if you're a Lois Lane fan, this was a good storyline for you, because this book was not just about Clark Kent being Superman and being a father. This book about Lois Lane also trying to get her career back, but at the same time still be hidden from the world, and also being a mother. And so this book had an equal balance of Lois Lane storyline and Clark Kent storyline. Even though their lives did collide, like their stories did collide with one another, you still had a perfect balance of watching these two characters grow in the new 52 world in these 8 books. It was kind of cool to see that. And that's why I like this book so much. Like, it was kind of cool to say, okay, cool, we're here with Clark Kent, and then you jump over to Lois Lane and you watch her adventures. It was kind of cool to see that. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up today's video. So please hit that like button down below, and also subscribe for more comic book videos in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here, and I'll see you on the next comic book video. Later, guys.